First of all, now, I think one question for me is, what do you think the challenge is? How is there a clash between us, the parents, and these children?
Absolutely, that's a huge clash. Well, I wouldn't say a clash. Clash is the wrong word. But I said there's a very clear distinctions between an African child, male, growing up in the UK than it is an African in Nigeria with the whole same, or in Africa, particularly I'm Nigerian, so I can only talk about that Nigerian culture.
Okay.
For me, I had the same experience growing up. Grew up in Nigeria, then came over to the UK when I was 10. So I still experienced the latter stages of primary school, and I experienced the whole stages of secondary school to college to university, and it was totally different because it felt like you live two different worlds. One, you live home, which is 100% Africa, 100% Benin, right? There's no distinction between my household in Benin and my household in the UK.
As a king or as a parent in the home, how do we get to know our subjects, which are the children? From your perspective now that you work with children, what are the things they want us to know about them?
First thing is the art of listening. I think that's number one. Any child that'll tell you that the one thing that they don't like about their parents is that they don't listen. It's number one. If you do a child, is number one reason. And I think parents have to come to this place of just listening without saying anything. Listening doesn't mean you're going to give them a solution. Majority of the time, your child has the solution, right? But it just wants someone to listen to. You just want somebody that they feel like they can trust and just listen to. And I would feel one is for you to get to know your child, you have to listen. Once you start listening, and if you actively listen, you would see what your child is going through. You would see the struggles that your child is facing if you're actively listening. So anything that is negative, everybody remembers that you're African.
So how does that affect our children?
It affects on many different levels. One, because you're never praised. You struggle with identity because you're never praised on who you are. Right? You're always praised on what people expect you to be. And
again, at home, you have that expectation.
Exactly.
And then the society has.
Perfect. So you're in this two world where one doesn't really totally accept you, and the one that does accept you doesn't really understand you. So it's a whole identity issue that mainly stems from within African male. And male, we struggle with identity crisis. Especially as teenagers, the number one thing that most teenagers suffer for is who they are. Right, trying to figure out who they are and where they fit into this world and where they fit into their lifestyle. Now, coming home as an African and raising up teenagers, number one thing on your head is good education, right? Because you're trying to foresee their future. You're trying to foresee to make sure they have a great future, a better future than you had, right? And you're trying to impart some level of you into them with that one, you understanding them, and two, trying to get them to understand you. Definitely, I think that's identity is definitely one of the main crises teenage boys specifically will deal with, and we.
Yeah.
And with boys, to get men to talk, you have to 100% be at their level. If they feel like you're not at their level, you're not going to. The channel of conversation is never going to open up. How do you get there? And if, for instance, with your guys, very simple thing is spending time with them playing PlayStation. Like the things that they enjoy doing the most, the things that you feel like is wayward, is the channel to bridge conversation. So,
well, For one of them,
for one of
PlayStation,
it's PlayStation,
or whatever you guys call it. For the
The other one is coming to this age of being a
an adult.
of being a teenager
but even with
into
that,
into a man.
I think I kind of know.
Yeah, where to come on.
Just say, come and learn to drive. And then you hear him say, and I think I agree with you. So knowing your subject is key. How to get them to talk to you, and also be conscious of listening actively.
Because I know that if we had stayed in Hackney, 100% I would have been a gang member, like without a shadow of doubt. Just because of how much they like cultivate and groom you and make you feel a certain type of way. It starts off with very little things, right? It starts off with just, you guys, you just riding a bicycle around the area, right? And you start being friends. And eventually they ask you, okay, cool, just do this. It's something as little as, I don't know, back then it was like putting a sting bomb at, your local corner shop. And you just do that. You do that, everybody cheers for you. You feel a level of achievement. You're part of something. You're part of something greater than you. And that's the feeling. That's the feeling. And eventually, you ride from one block to another block. And then they tell you, okay, cool, go to this other block and see what happens. Or go to this other block and punch somebody. And just see what happens. And eventually that escalates. And then you're tied in. It can go from being to just giving you money. Hey, just this little pocket money, hold this, do that.
So when all those things are happening as parents, how do we find out?
You're never going to find out. If you don't have, this is what I'm saying, because the repercussion of those overzealous expectations aren't being met. So the trust is not there because the child sees you as a teenager, sees you as somebody that they don't trust enough to want to tell you, because you don't even want to, in a way, come to their playground of understanding. Right? You don't want to come to their field of being able to relate to them, relatability is very important. And if they don't have that, you don't have trust. You don't have somebody that you can confide in. So as a parent, you see African parents, dominant African parents, it is hierarchy of my way, my rules, my household.
Yeah.
Anything outside of that, you just...
And unknown to us, that those things are chasing our children away from us.
As Africans in UK, in whatever city you're in,
world,
right? It's very important for you to also know what that city is doing for your child.
Good.
Okay? If you don't know, you're never going to know how to take advantage of that. You're never going to know how to take the upper hand. Like was talking about the last parent seminar we did with the organization that I work closely with. We talked about how to get free scholarships for your child. And in so when you do the interview, so the program that I do, sidetrack a little bit, I took our parents to one of the examination nights for a child to get a qualification. We went there, the parents saw that it was all Asians and white, and it was the only black person was, the only like black African person there was us. And she was so taken back with, because of, she was like, okay, this explains why the Asian community do so well. Like they take so full advantage of what's available to them. The reason they can take advantage of that is because they're in it. They know what's happening. We just tend to be like, okay, cool, go to school, get your degree, get a job, life's good. There was a case I was, involved in, and I remember speaking to the child and just, he had all this pressure. All of it is good. When I'm thinking about it in the long term, it's great. He's talking about, his parents pressuring him. He's got his Cambridge interviews. They forcing him to study something that he doesn't want to study, even though he's excelling at that subject. But to him, it's like, I don't really want to do this because I don't have the desire, but I'm doing it because of my parents. And I remember I had a conversation with the parents. I had a conversation with the parents. I was like, what do you see in your child? And they say everything I would expect a parent to say. And I said to her, okay, how far do you think your child's gonna go doing this? And they gave me the typical answer. Yeah, if it does well, I was like, okay, that's great. What if I told you that the moment your child goes to university, your child's never coming back home? And they was like, what do you mean? I was like, I can guarantee you now, when he goes to university, the level of freedom that he's going to acquire and independence that he's going to acquire, he's never wanted to come back home. What I would say is, as parents, we tend to compare. We compare a lot. We do that a lot. Or we compare our child with another child that's doing well. Do they have two heads? is the wonderful saying.
Did they fall from heaven?
You got an A, but do they have two heads? But you don't know what that parent has invested in their child.
Or even the child's abilities.
Exactly. But how do we bridge the gap? It's probably what you're trying to extend for. Practically comes down to a couple of things. It comes down to being, involved with your child in every decision that takes place until they get to a stage where you feel, I don't know, my dad is still heavily involved in the decision I make. I'm 29, so it is what it is. So it depends. It depends. So I think decision that they make, very important in terms of, it can be as simple as GCSE. What GCSE do they want to do? What is your child's strength, and what is your child not good at? And how do we improve on that? Being, we just spoke off camera in terms of being actively involved, actively invested in your child. Very, very, very is the most important thing, because once a child, especially in this day and age where every child is driven by what they see, right? From mobile phones to TV screen, rarely find a child that sits on a train and reads a book. Very rare, right? So everything is driven.
And when you ask, what are you doing on your phone? I'm reading my book. Oh my phone.
So they're actively driven by what they see. So if they're not seeing that participation from their parent, there's automatically you create this invisible barrier that you can't get through, you can't break through, because they're not seeing that involvement. Obviously, moving into diagram was a huge change, because I think it was the first time I actually felt out of place, and I was very vocal about being out of place. I remember being excluded quite a few times from school. But when I look back on it, as an adult, as a grown man, I always say I appreciate my dad for that move, because I know the friends that I had in Hackney, all of them were part of a gang. A few of them are still in prison up to today. 2 of them been killed. Wow. So I know that road that I potentially would have been heading for. When I look at my primary school year 6 primary school photo, all of the boys there have every single one of them have been incarcerated.
Wow.
Apart from me. So I guess
I'll just chip this in. An expo, what I do is, you need to go to court very well. I put on my trainers and we go to the court together. We meet the friends, spend 2 minutes there, and just come back home. I think for me, that's another way of knowing the environment. Just pop out with them and pop back in. I want to be fit. It's tough sometimes, but yeah. Yeah,
and that's I guess that's just the difference. I mean, when we talk about our friendship, my friendship, like every one of my friends knows my parents, and I know every single one of my friends' parents, right? And is the timeline is different, the behavior is different. So it's very important that you as parents, you're evolving, you're growing, because if you force yourself to remain in this time loop, you become a dinosaur. And what happens is that your kids overthink your respect becomes diminished, right? Because you're a dinosaur. So they see themselves as advanced, and they see like what you have to provide, the information you have to provide is outdated. How you provide it is outdated.
Yeah.
So everything is just useless. So your child is saying to you, your parenthood is useless. So if you don't evolve, if you don't constantly expose yourself, if you don't constantly put yourself in that surrounding to know your environment, what would lead to is what we see in inner city crime. What we see is that they will find those information from somebody else. Somebody else will be a father figure in a gang. Somebody is a ringleader, and somebody is the father. Somebody looks after them. Somebody pays attention and is accountable to them. When I was growing up in secondary school, before I went to secondary school, there was like this stern conversation that my dad had with me, which is don't forget who you are, and
we're all here.
Exactly, which is don't forget who you are. The
child of whom you are.
Yeah, and if you get stuff from this school, you're going back to Nigeria. So that was the environment that I had. And then going into secondary school, things changed. I saw a lot of things change. One, it was being able to figure out who I was and who I am. The environment that I was in a way, we had to have our own sort of African environment within our school. Because when I was at home, I was 100% African. And then going out into the school environment, even though being African wasn't popular, I had to find a way to create that same culture, that same feeling, because I felt that was who I am. I felt that was who I am, and because I didn't want to trade, I didn't want to play either or, because I felt like when I was in Hackney, I was playing either or. Right, so at home I'll be African, and then I'll be whoever they wanted me to be.